Minutes after that truck slammed into a Berlin Christmas market, CNN international anchor John Voss spoke with eyewitnesses.
It actually looked like he jumped the curb and was going out of control, lost control of the truck, and swerved into the crowded market. It went so fast, and it sort of jumped the curb and went sideways from where I was at. And people just started running and dropping their glue wine, which is, you know, such a big Christmas tradition here at the markets, and started screaming and running and yelling things in German. And I'm an American, and I've only lived here 3 months, so I don't know much German, but I knew enough to run, and I just ran in the other direction. And there's not much cover in these markets, so there's really no place to run. You sort of have to hide behind a stall or you know, just keep running. And I heard some popping, and I thought maybe there's a guy with a gun, and you know, we see it a lot in America with these people going on a rampage with guns. So I just tried to duck and cover and hid behind a stall with a bunch of other people until we thought it was safe to come out.
Do you remember seeing much security at the market before the truck went into the crowd?
There's always security around these markets and around Berlin. They're not as obvious as what you see in the U.S. with the guys in the army fatigues and the guns. They kind of are a little you know, hidden. They're not so obvious, but they're always there, and they're always looking around. But this is a very, very free society. It's a very open society, so it's not like it's in your face, so people can come and go as they please, which they like to do at the Christmas markets, because it is like your previous correspondent said, it is a tradition here in Germany, and people really, really love Christmas here in Germany.
Do you remember how long all of this lasted before the truck actually stopped?
It felt like 10 hours, but it was probably like 10 seconds. I was texting on my phone. I had stopped to respond to a text, and if I hadn't responded, I might have been hit, because it was only 20 feet away at that time. I looked up, and people just started running and scurrying and screaming, and I saw this big, you know, looked like a gigantic UPS truck coming towards us, and I just ran. I mean, it probably didn't last very long, but it felt like I was in slow motion and trying to get away from it. Very surreal.
So again, a terrorist using a truck as a weapon. What is being done to stop attacks like this here in the U.S.? Joining us again is CNN counterterrorism analyst and former CIA official Philip Mudd. Phil, thanks for sticking around. So we've seen it here in Berlin now. We saw it so horrifically in Nice. We saw it 3 weeks ago at Ohio State University. We understand this was a directive from ISIS that people should begin using their vehicles to mow down infidels. What can law enforcement and counterterrorism officials do about this?
Boy, I don't think there's much they can do. If you look at major events, we just had the Thanksgiving Day parade in New York. If you think about what happens in this country, for example, the Orange Bowl parade or the Rose Bowl out in California, in contrast to when we started down this counterterror campaign 15 years ago, back then you had a defined space. You had to protect a cockpit. You had to have people go through new scanners at airports. But that's a small space where you can control access by people. Think about those huge spaces we're talking about in places like California, Florida during their parades in New York. How do you prevent vehicles in a multi-mile area from entering that space? I suppose you could put up concrete barriers. You could limit access the day before to only pedestrians. But I think as we look at this, what ISIS is trying to tell followers is to access locations that simply can't be secured by federal officials unless you shut down a city. And I don't think that's possible across America.
Look, I marvel every day at New York and how the law enforcement officers here keep things going in New York. I mean, there's something like 8 million people who ride the subway. It's remarkable, this, you know, melting pot of New York, and that things have been safe virtually here. In fact, as we speak, there is a Christmas market, a holiday market set up right across the street from us. And look, these are soft targets. I mean, there's lots of these things. So how have U.S. officials thus far done it so successfully? More than just luck.
There's a lot more than luck. I think if you look at the past few years, there's three basic ideas you have to prevent incidents from happening. Number one, take out terrorists before they get here in places like Afghanistan and Syria. That's why the conversation about what we do with Russians potentially under a new presidency to cooperate to shut down ISIS is so important. Stop them overseas. If you can't stop them overseas, have new processes at the borders, biometric passports, for example, hardening of cockpit doors to ensure that people can't get into the country. And finally, when they get here, you look at programs like the NYPD, ensure that you have an intelligence process to identify people before they do something. I think securing locations is not going to be efficient. This is not about locations, it's about people. You've got to find people before they do this because you just can't secure everything.
And Phil, is it also about timing in terms of, do law enforcement and counterterrorism officials expect things to spike around holidays?
I think that conversation about timing is not does not match what I saw when I was a practitioner. We talk about timing, for example, Christmas markets, but if you look just at what's happened in the United States over the past year in San Bernardino and Orlando, I don't think trying to synchronize security responses to particular events or particular dates is effective. Again, you've got to go back to this question about how do you balance civil liberties, looking at Americans, looking at American social media footprint, who's talking about ISIS on their Facebook account, for example, and ensuring that you protect America by saying we can't wait to try to secure something as big as the Macy's parade. We've got to find the guy getting in the truck. One quick comment, Allison. I think that's one of the frustrations about what we'll see in Berlin. That is, this individual evidently, by the early reporting, has been in Germany for about a year. I doubt he was fully radicalized by the time he got to Germany. How do you find an immigrant like that, a refugee, if he's not even radicalized when he comes into your country? It's either keep everybody out or assume that there's going to be some risk to accepting refugees in your country.
Hey, Phil, one quick note of caution. In CNN here, we are just getting a little breaking news. Berlin police president says suspect in custody may not be the driver. The Berlin president has just held a press conference regarding Monday's truck attack, saying we have not finished with our investigation yet. We cannot confirm that this person, this suspect in custody, is the driver. So we will all hold off until we get more information throughout the program on this. But Phil, thank you very much for all of your expertise. It's always nice to talk to you. Thank you. So families who lost loved ones in the Pulse nightclub shooting are now suing social media giants. So we're going to explain why they say that Facebook, Google, and Twitter helped in that attack.